Get ready for a dynamic episode of Features Talk, the one and only podcast made to bring the tech to the streets to shed light on how the new era of automation is changing the roles of drivers and passengers today. Lisa Bailey, the founder of FeaturesFirst Auto and co-host product specialist Luke Verseput, will discuss how today is no longer just about the art of keeping up with the trends. Safety is a priority. While one can appreciate the luxurious experience cars can provide, when it comes to interacting, connecting, and co-piloting with automated technology, full understanding is needed. Whether you are an early adopter, car enthusiast, parent, or concerned citizen, this is the podcast for you. You will gain deeper knowledge on the technology at work in your car that provides you a safer driving experience, gain insights on your role as a driver or passenger in the new era of automation, and hear actionable advice and solutions when you listen to Features Talk. Here's your host, Lisa Bailey.
Hello, community. We are here again for another episode of Features Talk Podcast, where we are bringing the tech to the streets to simplify the information for our community about the technology that is at work in their car. And I have my wonderful car guru specialist, our community product specialist, Luke Verseput, who is here to bring his expertise and his knowledge to the community. And so we are so excited to have you here again, Luke, as my co-host. Please say hello. And I see we have another special guest with us today, too, so you can introduce our other co-hosts as well today.
Yeah, hey, good to see everyone. My name's Luke. So I'm a product specialist for Kia. I work for the past, how long has it been? A year and 9 months now. I've worked at Citrus Kia in Ontario. Well, Citrus Motors does both Ford and Kia. I work on the Kia side. I've been there for the past year and 9 months. It's been wonderful. And like we touched on, my job as a product specialist is focused on communicating the technology and features of cars to customers. So, that's what I do. That's my day job. Outside of work, I'm just kind of a car geek.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Everything that you know, the community is so grateful to have you to share it, right? Because you're doing that right now in your suit and tie, but now you get to be a little bit more relaxed and we get to reach more people. So we are so excited to have you. And I see we have another co-host, so you can introduce who that is to the community too.
At the moment, we have Bonnie.
Hi, Bonnie. Now tell everybody what type of dog Bonnie is.
Bonnie, we're not exactly sure. She and my other dog are rescue dogs. We're not sure the place where we rescued her from. What they weren't really sure either. Chihuahua clearly is part of it.
Yes.
We think the other part might be terrier. We're not sure, but we think it might be terrier because when she stands, she has these really broad front shoulders.
Oh, really?
Most dogs, when they stand, it's just like their front legs go straight down. But terriers and pit bulls, they kind of have these, it's like their front legs kind of go like this.
Yeah.
So it's not huge, but she's got a little bit of that. So we think Chihuahua.
Well, welcome,
terrier.
Bonnie. Welcome to the session. Yeah. We talk about dogs and we talk about the features that help dogs and pet owners, right? The owners that have pets. And so we want to welcome them too to the podcast. Why not? So with this episode, we're going to be talking today. I can't believe it's already episode 4, but today we're talking about EVs. In episode 3, we laid the foundation of, how EVs are coming into the market and how we can prepare to become owners of electric vehicles. But this time, we're really going to talk about how EVs will become mainstream. And really, the only way that we can answer that question is to look at one of the main leaders in the auto industry right now, who really started and laid the foundation for electric vehicles. And we all know who that is. That's Tesla, right? Mm-hmm. Tesla pretty much, came in as a leader, as a front runner, really, when it comes to automated technologies and implementing artificial intelligence into the driving experience, and how they have made EVs more mainstream and socially acceptable. I myself, as a driver, see many of Teslas on the roads. Everyone has there's a large group of fans of Teslas, even though obviously there are some pros and cons to having Teslas and really understanding and making smart decisions when you are driving and interacting with that technology. But from your standpoint, Luke, as a product specialist, looking at Tesla and how they have, really been the forerunner when it comes to EVs, what's your take on that?
As far as Tesla's involvement with electric vehicles, it's been big. It's come to that point where since our big focus of today is EVs and how they've become mainstream instead of just like this twinkle in the eye of an engineer, now they're actually here and will be increasingly so. There's a mental gap to bridge, right? There's this mental gap of people thinking like, oh, EVs are like a pipe dream. Well, now they're not a pipe dream. Now they're a real thing.
Yes.
And so Tesla has really kind of been the big thing, one of the biggest players in bridging that mental gap of kind of educating people on like, no, this is a real thing and this is going to be a part of your life. And to the point where it's kind of become one of those things where, when we say like, oh, I need a Kleenex, we don't actually mean the brand Kleenex. We just mean any generic tissue.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Or like, oh, I need to Xerox this. Doesn't mean you're using a Xerox. It just means you're copying paper.
Right.
But it's something that has become so synonymous with just the public conscience of a certain type of product that even at work, I've talked to customers. They say I'm kind of in the market for Teslas.
Yeah.
Which sounds silly. Here they are at a Kia dealership, but
yes.
The thing is, what they just mean, they don't mean Teslas. They mean electric vehicles.
Exactly.
And so Tesla's name has permeated it's permeated kind of everywhere to the point where now people think of Tesla meaning an electric vehicle.
Yes.
And so that's the biggest impact. And of course, there's the whole rabbit hole of like thoughts on Elon Musk, thoughts on Tesla's business practices. Yes. That's beyond the scope of this podcast. But as far as EVs becoming mainstream, we wanted to start with Tesla because they're kind of already here.
Exactly.
All other automakers are essentially going to be playing catch up in the coming years. And some really, really viable efforts are already underway, and we'll see some on the road before too long. But the way I see it is Tesla, for someone who works for Kia, who doesn't yet have a full-on from the ground up EV to compete with Tesla's vehicles today. They will soon. The new EV6. Yes. We'll touch on that more. But currently, it's hard. When customers drive up in a Tesla Model 3, just on Tuesday, there was an older couple. They drove up in a Tesla Model 3 and they were looking at the Niro EV, which is right now the only electric vehicle that Kia has. And I thought, that's a tough opponent.
Yes, it is.
It's right now, Tesla kind of came on and kind of took it by storm. So other automakers have not had meaningful responses to it, but they are going to, and we have some evidence of that, which we're going to talk about. But as a product specialist, I see Tesla as they've paved the way. Maybe not so much from the technology standpoint, because other companies are tackling the technology in their own ways, which we'll get into. But from a public consciousness standpoint, Tesla has paved that road already.
Yes, that's like the most important part is the public consciousness, right? That's the whole point of this podcast, is to get drivers to understand that your level of awareness, just as much as you are aware of Tesla and what Tesla can do, there is a broader perspective when it comes to just the driving experience, period, and understanding how things are changing. And so you're so absolutely right. Every time I talk about an electric vehicle, Tesla is the first thing that someone, or the first brand that they talk about, because they are the forerunners. They did it when it was not convenient. They came out with the technology. They put the vehicles together when it wasn't accepted. And now, like you said, as of today, we're talking about electric vehicles, and now it's becoming more socially accepted. And so speaking of that, with Tesla leading the way, when we look at the manufacturers right now and really thinking about a fact, actually, that I'll pull up really quickly, there was a statistic that I found that a record number of almost 100 pure electric vehicle models are set to debut by the end of 2024, if all goes according to plan with the electric vehicle product roadmap for many of the auto manufacturers. And so what I've seen in my research is really between 2022 and like 2030, 2040, there's going to be a boom. Electric vehicles that are hitting the market. And this is such a great time for us as drivers and passengers to prepare ourselves as the automotive industry is preparing themselves. We're preparing ourselves as well with educating ourselves to understand what's really going on. And if I look at, thinking about mainstream, General Motors has done a very, very big job with bringing to the forefront what they represent with their zero emissions plan and zero collisions and zero combustion. And so I know recently in January, it says GM announced in January that it aspires to have an all electric model lineup by TRR 2035. And that by the end of 2025, 40% of its models will be pure EVs. Now, if you think about where General Motors is right now in their vehicle lineup with their fleet, and thinking of that reality, that 40% of the models will be pure EVs, that is a really big jump. You know, for me to think about that as a driver and having to go and purchase vehicles and understand what my life will be like with owning an electric vehicle. What have you seen in the market when it comes to General Motors, Luke, and their lineup with what they're doing with electric vehicles?
Well, for General Motors has one of the most hotly anticipated EVs in the works right now. I forget exactly when it's expected to be released, but that's, of course, going to be the Hummer EV.
Yep.
Now, a lot of people, which is interesting, right? A lot of people think of the Hummer as like a quintessential example of excess wealth, disregard for environmental consciousness, right? I mean, an impractically big gas-guzzling thing that actually has a huge connection to the military when it was called the when it was called the Humvee, because what we know of as the Hummer, it started as a vehicle called the Humvee and was only for military purposes.
Yeah.
But it was later, they made road versions. That's how we came with the Hummers. So, like I said, it was this beacon of throwing your wealth in other people's faces.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it, kind of garnered there were some negative connotations along with that. And then you throw in, if it's someone who's anti-military, forget it. You know? But now, one of the most hotly anticipated EVs is the Hummer EV.
Yep.
And so...
what a change, right?
Right. The Hummer brand dissolved after the Hummer H3.
Yeah.
Sales were going down. No one was really buying them. So GM dissolved the Hummer brand. But now they're bringing this EV back under the Hummer name.
Yeah.
And really... I mean, one is just because it's a cool platform for this type of vehicle, but also they're kind of trying to maybe do some repairs on people's mental image of Hummer, which has never been that good.
Yeah.
So here's what the Hummer EV is. And this is what I think is really cool about General Motors with EVs is General Motors is tackling EVs, not so much to go right up against Tesla.
Yeah.
But General Motors is with the Hummer EV they're making a vehicle that's going to be tackling off-road enthusiasts and people who are into that hobby.
Yeah.
And so the Hummer EV, when people think Hummer, think, big, huge off-roading military vehicle. And it's still a big off-roading vehicle, though this one will obviously not be used for military application.
Yes.
But here's what's great about this. It's an electric vehicle that is focused on overlanding and off-roading. And so this thing's bringing in a bunch of features that would be so hard to do with a traditional gas engine car. And obviously we're talking about like the bleeding edge of automotive engineering, implementing EVs here. So not that it's easy.
Yes.
But it's more doable. I should say it's more doable with an EV. This thing's going to be boasting features like, first, it's going to weigh like over 6,000 pounds, obviously, but it's going to pull a 0 to 60 of like 5 seconds or something like that. It's going to have a range of well over 300 miles, depending on what kind of driving you're doing.
Exactly.
Its best possible range, really babying it can be over 300 miles. That's kind of become the new benchmark. And so, but that's, EV buyers already look for that. Oh, what's its range and stuff like that. And if you're more into the performance, what's its 0 to 60? But this thing is going to be implementing, four-wheel steering, because it's going to be using independent electric motors.
Okay, now explain to our community what that means.
Yeah, so I will. That's why I brought this up, because this is going to get brought up later. That's why I'm bringing it up now. There's so far electric vehicles, including Tesla. So far, it's been done that you have one electric motor that drives one of the axles, and the other two wheels are just kind of along for the ride. It just uses a regular electric motor. That's what most people think of. But independent electric motors being used at multiple wheels is also being implemented in some current and upcoming vehicles. And so what that means is you have a different electric motor driving each individual wheel. It's like the space age 4-wheel drive,
Oh.
And at least we currently think of it as like a space age 4-wheel drive.
Yes.
Interesting times. And the reason I bring this up with regards to the Hummer EV is it's going after off-roading and overlanding, which automatically is going to mean 4-wheel drive and for a truck or an SUV. Well, this thing is going to be doing that all electric. but it's not just going to be doing one gigantic electric motor that then will have to try and distribute power to all four wheels. It's using multiple motors.
Wow.
So they can,
that's power.
Right. So it's power, but it's also just flexibility.
Yeah.
And so if you're stuck in rough terrain, you don't have to use a complicated gearbox or a complicated, transfer case to try and wiggle itself out. You'd use what is admittedly still a complicated system, but you can power up or down individual motors on the wheels to do what they need to do.
Wow.
And a lot has been made about one of the biggest features of this car, which is this truck, the Hummer EV, which is its crab walking feature. If you're stuck and you need to get somewhere, the front wheels can turn this way and the back wheels turn that way. And the vehicle, while facing this way, can do that.
Oh, wow.
So it can literally sidestep.
Wow. Now that's new. That's a new concept for a vehicle because normally it's either front or back.
Right. And four-wheel steering is not a new concept. Actually, the first vehicles to implement some kind of four-wheel steering were actually in the late 80s, but that was a very primitive system. But the way that would work is the front wheels would go this way, the back wheels would go the opposite way for tighter turns. But no, this is really going to be the first vehicle that fully implements like a sidestepping, like crab walking feature.
Wow.
And again, this is all going to be more doable with electric motors because there's going to be just less moving parts for all of it. So without getting too technical into all that, the Hummer EV is kind of one of General Motors' biggest.
Yes.
They're like upcoming things to really, again, we're talking about EVs becoming mainstream. Mainstream doesn't just mean, the Tesla that drives your kids to and from soccer practice. It means for people who are into off-roading and overlanding and four-wheel drive hobbies, they're going to have an avenue for this. And obviously there will be more competitors coming to the Hummer EV, but this is going to be one of them.
Exactly.
Now, current General Motors current things are, of course, the Bolt EV, a very small subcompact kind of crossover. I hesitate to say crossover; it's a small vehicle, but the small Bolt EV, and of course, a lot of people know the Chevy Volt.
Yep.
That's
a popular one.
Which is essentially a plug-in hybrid vehicle.
And what would be the difference? Well, obviously, the difference with plug-in and non-plug-in, one you plug in and one you don't plug in.
Right. Yeah, of course.
But it seems like the brands have a little bit of a differentiating factor with that too. Having some that people that want to have a plug-in hybrid and then others that don't want to have a plug-in hybrid. But I know General Motors has definitely made a very bold claims when it comes to their electric vehicle line. And Mary Barra, she's made it very clear that they are investing their money into the electric future. And so it's going to be very interesting to see, honestly, how the manufacturers come together. Obviously, there's going to be healthy competition between all of them, right? Everybody wants to get to all EV first. But, I'm thinking about it a little bit from a different perspective with making sure that we as the drivers and the communities and the public are prepared as well. So hopefully, there's somewhat some policies that can be passed with standardization when it comes to terminology and just making it better and easier for the public to understand. Now, I know you mentioned this will kind of transition us into the next manufacturer that we're talking about, but you brought up the difference between when we think about mainstream, we're thinking about common vehicles and luxury vehicles and then exotic, right? So if we're thinking about common, obviously General Motors under mainstream would fall under that common sector. But when we think about luxury vehicles, we can think about looking at Mercedes-Benz and what they're doing with their electric vehicle line. And I know Mercedes-Benz, their electronic push began back in 2007 with an EV version of the Smart for Two city car. And so now they actually have plans to introduce 10 new EV models by 2022. So you can see that because they started in 2007 with their electric vehicle line, right now when we're making this major shift to all EVs, they're somewhat ahead of the game to really start competing, maybe not necessarily with Tesla, but getting to where Tesla has been able to raise their level of awareness a lot quicker because they've been at it a lot longer. And so thinking about luxury, vehicles and Mercedes-Benz, what have you seen with Mercedes-Benz and what they're doing with their electric vehicles?
So you mentioned the smart car. So that would be technically under the Daimler name.
Yeah.
Which, we don't use, that's not a word we think of very often in the United States. That's more like Mercedes efforts overseas. But that Smart 4.2 that EV was kind of one of their early ways of getting into it. But now the one that's really making headlines is the upcoming Mercedes-Benz EQS. Now the EQS is tackling a very different angle than the Hummer EV. So the Hummer EV is going all in on overlanding and stuff like that. And I should clarify, since we're now bringing up luxury brands, the Hummer EV will not be a cheap date. It's going to be a six-figure. That's going to be an easy six-figure big electric vehicle. So So just as a disclaimer, Hummer EV is not going to be a cheap vehicle.
No, it will not. You will pay for that. You will pay for that common vehicle.
Yeah. So only reason we bring it up though is because it's under a brand that does not focus on luxury.
Yes, absolutely.
But now let's kind of, pun intended, change gears.
Yeah.
EVs don't have gears. To change gears to Mercedes-Benz, a brand that has built its legacy on luxury vehicles.
Exactly.
Largely. And so the EQS, and that's not spelled any particular way. It's just the letter E, letter Q, letter S, if you haven't seen it in print yet. But it's being called the 2022 Mercedes-Benz EQS. And this is why it's really been talked about a lot because, we're almost coming up on 2022 already, which feels weird.
I know.
But this is going to be one of those that's close to coming. And you can see pictures of it, of pretty much what the final production version is going to look like. This one, going to be very different than the Hummer EV. This is a car, a sedan.
Yes,
if you think shape of a luxury car, that's what this is going to be. But it's bringing a lot of stuff to the table. It's going to be focusing on Mercedes-Benz kind of vision of an all digital way. I guess would say driver interaction.
Yes.
I guess for a better lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
Well, connected, yeah, but I mean, it's in terms of like just from a tactile standpoint, how do you physically interact with the car inside?
Yes.
It's all going to be all digital. That's going to be a really big thing about this. And this is of course going to be focusing more on the luxury space as a luxury car. And now similar to the Hummer EV and what I anticipate, this is kind of me just thinking, I anticipate more electric vehicles are going to do this for the most part. It's again going with that multi-motor setup. So this one is going to have one electric motor on the rear axle and another motor on the front axle. So that is also going to make this an all-wheel drive vehicle.
Yeah.
And so that again is going to mean that you can really tailor that to how the vehicle is being driven. I mean, what better way to save range on your EV than to just power down one of the electric motors entirely when you don't need all-wheel drive.
Yes.
And so that's like the Hummer EV that's kind of what they're going for. Although this will, of course, not be all-wheel drive tailored to off-roading, it will be tailored to on-road stability and to make it more stable in bad weather should come rain, snow, or mud or whatever might be on the road.
Exactly. So
it's going to be about luxury for this one and kind of daily drivability. What I like about this one is that this is coming from a brand where typically a lot of its customers already have the money for it.
Yes.
You know, because people who are aiming for Mercedes-Benz or have bought Mercedes-Benz for a long time.
Yep.
There might be, I've just obviously just speculated, but they might be in a different space financially than someone like me who would be in the market for, where even a Chevy Bolt would be pushing it for me.
Yeah.
And that's I'm just saying
yes.
That's why I'm a Kia Soul guy.
But you know what? It's a good thing that there is a mix, right? Because you got Tesla drivers and you have non-Tesla drivers. That stuff costs. Certain brands are for certain that bring that luxury. You have to be able to pay for that. And so, everybody gets to their feel of luxury, honestly. And it's nice that each brand has a level that can tailor to everybody. And
And this is another, we have other brands to talk about, but to kind of wrap this one up nicely, this EQS is also another interesting indication of brands not only just introducing these new individual vehicles, but kind of having to restructure parts of their entire company around such a new type of vehicle. Think about it. Hummer, the brand Hummer basically just died because, they didn't have a place in the market. As vehicles move more and more towards efficiency.
Yes.
Suddenly you could have a nice luxury SUV and not have to have something that got 10 miles per gallon and was associated with the military.
Right.
So the brand Hummer died, but now GM is bringing back the Hummer name but it's a completely different world now, and they're a completely different kind of car, an all electric vehicle.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the biggest changes you can make as a brand, large brand, small brand, is just change the way people think of it and the way people see it and how you market it.
Yes.
Now, here's Mercedes-Benz thing. This vehicle that we're talking about is called the EQS. It is going to be followed up by vehicles like so this is according to Car and Driver.
Okay.
Car and Driver has always been a good. It's
a reputable source, yes.
Right, and so it's going to be followed by the EQA, the EQB, and the EQE. So Mercedes-Benz EQ is going to be a name to watch. The EQ is going to be Mercedes-Benz all-electric sub-brand.
Oh.
So and so that's why.
That's how they're introducing 10 new EVs by 2022.
Right. So what easier way to do that than just have them all be the EQ, this, and that?
Exactly.
And that it makes it so much easier for them to market. It's like you don't have to think like, oh, the all-electric Mercedes. But no, not that one. The Mercedes-Benz, that's the EV.
Yes.
Not the S-Class that this wealthy guy's been buying for the last 80 years.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so EQ, right? Like what a way to do that. No, what General Motors keeps coming out with things like under the Hummer name.
Yes.
Which I don't think is likely because the Bolt is already under Chevrolet's name. I think they'll take a different approach.
Yeah.
I think General Motors is taking a different approach, but Mercedes-Benz, I like this approach. Just have a new sub-brand, EQ, and it's going to be the electric vehicles, and these are going to be there's going to be compact SUVs, a lesser expensive entry luxury sedan, because this EQS is going to be topping also $100,000 pretty easily.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is to kind of close it out with Mercedes-Benz and General Motors. This is showing kind of a new trend of brands having to kind of make some big changes.
It's very true. And how they are introducing it, it speaks to the evolution that's happening. And in that evolution and moving towards more electric vehicles, how do we present that as a brand? And how do we make it less confusing and streamlined? And so it makes sense for Mercedes to come out with EQ and just build on that line and make it easier for, their longtime standing customers to really take that journey with them. And so definitely looking out for Mercedes-Benz and what they're doing with their electric vehicle line, because they've got a lot going on by next year. And we're already halfway through here, 2021.
And one final note I'll say, I'll make this quick, but
yes,
as a very personal thing for me, like even regardless of me as a product specialist, if I weren't a product specialist and I didn't know about cars,
yes,
this would still appeal to me. And I wanted to bring this up because I got to say, before I was ever into cars, and now that I'm super into cars, throughout all of this, I have never thought of Mercedes-Benz as a young person's car. That thought has never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Growing up, like as a little kid, before I was really obsessed with cars, I heard about Mercedes-Benz as this like a really expensive car, because I didn't know about brands like Bugatti or Pagani, where cars can top 7 figures.
Yes.
Like Mercedes-Benz, forget it, right? I thought it's this really expensive car.
Yes.
But now, more recently, that I've been really into cars, Mercedes-Benz is coming out with these, and with their collaboration with AMG, have come out with these really high performance, like the AMG GT, and GT and AMG versions of their luxury vehicles that are really sporty, and they have loud engines. And you know what's still in my mind even now? I think it's still not a young person's car. You know why?
Yeah.
Because you can't afford them if you're that young.
Yes. They are pretty pricey. They're luxury vehicles.
It's just something about that Mercedes-Benz name. It has never sounded like a young person's car to me. So this is why I like the EQ branding. Even if I didn't know about cars, EQ sounds like, oh, yes, it's made by Mercedes-Benz, but what if this is now towards a different kind of person?
Yes.
Right. And so that's going to be enticing, right? It's just going to give people a different perspective, especially people like me who have grown up seeing Mercedes-Benz as an old person's car. Now, admittedly, it's not going to be this EQS, which is going to be an expensive one. But the thing is, you usually have to start there, right? You start by introducing the big dog, and then it's going to show here's what the less expensive ones, the more attainable ones will be made out of.
Exactly.
So I just as me personally, as someone who has never seen Mercedes-Benz as a young person's brand, that's why this is pretty cool.
You're listening to Features Talk, shedding light on the new era of automation. To find out more, go to www.FeaturesFirstAuto.com. Now back to the show with your host, Lisa Bailey.
And I love that you're saying that, because it's exactly what we're saying with the evolution. Honestly, Mercedes-Benz has a new opportunity to reach a completely different audience that they didn't reach before. Not to say that, maybe at a young age, you will be able to afford, they will have a line that's affordable for us, for 20, 30s, and a little bit younger, that they will have a line that appeals to us. And we won't think that, Mercedes is for older people, but they actually have something that's for us as well. So it's really exciting to see these brands have an opportunity to reintroduce themselves with something that is eco-friendly, right? And so it's eco-friendly, and it's electric vehicles, and it's definitely going to be interesting. Now, I want to touch a little bit on Kia. And Kia is, that's right, I'm a Kia girl. Kia is what we would consider mainstream. And I believe in February, it was on February 9th, the president and CEO did a presentation actually about Kia and spoke specifically about their electric vehicle fleet and what they're expecting to do. And he basically told everybody, we are being reborn. They're going to have a new logo. They're going to have a new design, a new corporate name. And by 2030, eco-friendly vehicles such as EVs and hybrid EVs, and then plug-in hybrid EVs will make up 40% of all sales for Kia. Now, considering their line that they have now, that is a very big jump. With what they're saying. They're saying that Kia aims to grow their EV sales all the way to that's over 880,000 units in 2030. That is a very big jump. And I know you working at Kia, seeing it from your perspective, I'm very excited to hear about what you have to say about Kia and what they're doing with their electric vehicles.
So I will say, as far as the new logo is already out there. It can be seen on the 2022.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah. The picture of that carnival that my dad got that I sent you.
That's the new logo.
Take a look at that logo. That's what it's going to be. That's
nice. So the rebranding has already started.
Yeah, the logo's already out. It's still going to be called Kia.
Yes.
But no, the logo's already out. But as far as EVs, now this is an exciting one. If anyone who's looked at anything about Kia's EVs has undoubtedly seen news of the EV6. And if you haven't, I'm not saying you should already know about this, but if you haven't, Kia's big upcoming vehicle is called the EV6. Just letter E, letter V, number 6.
Yes.
And this is going to be a, from the ground up, pure electric crossover. Think like small SUV, not really small, but kind of small to mid-size SUV, but all electric, right? And it's going to be called the EV6. This is going to be Kia's very first, just from the ground up EV. And when I say that is, they've had previously they've had the Soul EV. Now there was a Soul EV from 2014 to 2016, and that stopped after only a couple of years. So far, no word on a 2021 Soul EV. And they have the Nero EV. But these are vehicles that have been made into EVs from an existing gas engine platform.
Okay.
So which is a kind of a, I don't want to say cost cutting way, but it's a less expensive way to do it, right? You already have the existing platform, the existing chassis, just kind of retool the insides to accommodate an EV.
Electric vehicles.
Works, but it's right, but it doesn't give you as much flexibility, right? In design, because you are kind of going off a design that's already set in stone.
Right.
So that's what's so big about the EV6. It is designed from the ground up to only be an EV. And what I like about this one is this is now going to be the first EV that we talked about in this episode, at least, that is going to be thankfully under six figures. I know.
Yay!
And I want to make that clear, even before anything else. I want to make that clear because so far the Hummer EV and the EQ and the Mercedes-Benz EQS.
Yes.
Some people might be watching and go, mainstream? Really? I don't have $100,000 sitting around for a car.
So here we are talking about the mainstream for under six figures.
Exactly. So that's why I'm bringing this up now. To be clear, pricing hasn't been officially specifically announced for this, so we don't know exactly what it's going to be. But I mean, this is Kia we're talking about.
Yes, they're affordable vehicles. They are very affordable vehicles. Yes,
exactly. It's like, come on, it's just Kia we're talking about, and so it's $100,000 is not going to be on the cards for this thing. But no, it's going to be a electric crossover aimed more at affordability and just, for more common buyers.
Yes.
And this one is going to have a few different options. Now, I'm not bringing this up as like a future sales pitch or anything because I'm off the clock. I'm not supposed to be selling cars right now. But I just bring this up so we can be aware of, again, of how this will be mainstream.
Yes.
And here's what I like about the EV6 is that it's going to come out and essentially have a lot of the same options that normal cars have.
Yeah.
Minus engine transmission stuff because EV. But it's going to have a couple different powertrain options. Like a lot of current cars have different powertrain options.
Yes.
If you're looking at normal cars, there might be a slightly higher performance version.
Right.
Or similar to the Optima that you have, Lisa, there's the normal, the hybrid, the plug-in hybrid. Or at least there was when the Optima was being sold. So this is going to be a similar thing. It's going to have the base model is going to have a single electric motor that will do about 167 horsepower. But then it's going to have a higher performance one that is a dual motor where it's going to have one electric motor on the front, one electric motor on the back. And that higher performance one, that's going to be the one you hear a lot of people talking about because this again is going to be kind of a big leap in uncharted territory for Kia, right? Not only is it going to be their first from the ground up electric vehicle, that higher performance one is going to be doing about they've announced the numbers. It's going to say 576 horsepower.
Wow.
And it's going to be able to pull a 0 to 60 of 3.5 seconds in an SUV.
Wow.
And that is not, Kia has the Stinger right now, that higher performance, sedan.
Yes.
But that is not, it's fast, but it's not, this is now supercars in the $200,000-$300,000 range were hitting those speeds only less than 10 years ago.
Wow.
And so.
That's really a new experience for Kia though, huh?
Yeah. And let alone the experience, let alone a new experience for, can you imagine the Kia buyers who have never, like us who have never experienced that.
Yeah.
Boy, it's going to be a big thing. Now, the reason we're bringing up the EV6 here is, again, we don't want to just talk about these crazy expensive cars.
Yes.
Which this won't be. Yes, it's not going to be their cheapest, clearly, but it's not going to be out of the realm of attainability for a lot of people. It's going to grow to a common vehicle pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And this, again, is representing a big change for Kia. Now, they're not doing a whole separate rebranding. They're not doing I don't know that they're doing a whole separate sub-brand of this thing, like Mercedes-Benz. But here's what I think is cool about, and again, tying this to SUVs becoming mainstream, Kia is not known as an old person's car. Kia is normally thought of as a younger person's car.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so usually bought by people who, like recent college graduate me, don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And can, it's like, you got to get a car that's okay. Well, let's get a Soul, get a Forte, get something that's affordable.
Yes.
And so now the nice thing about Kia is that in recent years, their quality has far, I think, surpassed
Exceeded
past what price they're asking.
Yes.
And so now they've already got, what I like about Kia is they've got a healthy brand name coming into this thing.
Yes.
And it's very interesting seeing different approaches to this and how different automakers are going to be affected by this. Kia is already known as a young person's car. And the whole idea of an EV, well, that is inevitably targeted at younger people because they are going to be the longest lasting market for this because they still have years to get old and become used to these cars.
Yep.
And so what I think is cool about the EV6 is it's going to really, I think, solidify for Kia that electric vehicles can be more affordable and that they can still be cool. That you don't have to cheap out to get an EV.
That's right.
And as far as the brand name, well, they're already mainstream. They don't have to worry about that. And mainstream with, as an economical brand.
Right.
But think about how different this is than tackling an EV market with a name like Hummer that a lot of people not many years ago did not like.
Yeah, it's very true.
That's a big gambit by General Motors. That's trying to completely sway opinion, not just to get noticed for the first time, but that's swaying an opinion from bad to good. That's an enormous task.
It is very big.
So Kia doesn't quite have that uphill battle.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a challenge, right? Because as we're talking about, all these automakers have one common uphill battle. Yeah. And that's Tesla.
Yep. It's very true. Tesla set the standard, like we said at the beginning. They decided to be the forerunner. And so, will they make it to the level of a Tesla as far as skill and engineering? I think it's very possible, but it's also, like you said, the most important thing, or one of the most important things, is your awareness, your brand awareness. You can come out with these lines, but your customers and the people who buy your vehicles and what you make have to be on board with what you're doing. And so it's very important that the automakers make sure that they are, communicating with their buyers, not just the bells and whistles of these vehicles, but the safety components as well, and the efficiency as well. And GM has done a great job at really targeting the safety component and their level of awareness when it comes to eco-friendly and what's going on with the world and the climate crisis. And so I really like to see that from a brand where we know that they're all competing, but transparency is very important.
Yeah, of course. And the final thing I'll say about the EV6 is kind of, again, something to say about all these. I mentioned earlier that like this whole 300-mile range thing is kind of like become, in a lot of people's minds, the benchmark for at least upcoming EVs.
Yeah.
It's kind of become not like a given in writing, but it's just, it's like in a lot of people's just consumers' minds, right? Like if you're going to come out with an EV, like forget what it looks like, forget how fast it is, how many people can it carry, safety, whatever. Just can it go 300 miles at least? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I didn't mention it with the others, but it kind of goes without saying, the EV6 is expected to have a range of a little over 300. They're saying over 300 miles, which of course is vague. We'll see when it actually comes out.
Right.
The Mercedes-Benz EQS is also boasting a range of 320 miles, and the Hummer EV is boasting a range of close to 400 miles.
Oh wow!
If it's driven properly, but again, that's an enormous truck where you have room to put a lot bigger batteries just from the size of the vehicle. So
exactly.
I should mention, as we're talking about this with these pure EVs, 300 miles is something that you'll hear a lot about because that's just kind of expected to be.
Yep.
That's
standard.
That's what most normal gas cars get on one full tank of gas. My Kia Soul on a full tank of gas, and mine only has 700 miles on it, so it's not old. It's operating in its peak brand new condition. Mine will do about 340.
Okay.
About 340 to 350 miles. So
that's a full gallon.
Yeah. On a full gas tank, yeah. So you'll hear 300 miles as a common EV thing.
Okay. And that's good to know too, for the community, understanding, well, how far should I be looking for it to go? What would be a common standard? Now, I know when we were previously talking about EVs, Luke, and we started talking about the luxury brands, and we were talking about, which one is going to be best to talk about for our community. And we chose Mercedes-Benz, but we also decided to throw in Lamborghini and Porsche as well. And so talking about, how they define exotic when it comes to their electric vehicles. And honestly, what is Lamborghini up to? I haven't heard much, but you shared some information with me. And so I'm excited to have you share that when it comes to Lamborghini and Porsche with the community about what they're doing with their electric vehicle line.
Yeah. So this, and this, by the way, also just as kind of a background on me, my favorite cars are like super high performance cars. Yes. Like, yes, I get they're exorbitantly expensive and most people can't afford them. I, in a way, I don't ever anticipate being able to afford such a car, but I love cars as pieces of engineering.
Yes.
More than anything to sell or anything like that. I'm more into cars as pieces of engineering.
Yes.
Primarily.
Exactly.
And because these really like cutting edge cars are where a lot of the engineering is showcased and tested before it comes down to other cars. That's why I kind of like it. So like, will I ever be able to afford a car with that name? Probably not, but I still love analyzing them.
Yes.
And so the reason I bring this up with EVs is because kind of in the same vein of General Motors focusing the Hummer EV on off-roading and just durability and utility and a more utilitarian nature.
Yeah.
Lamborghini and Porsche and other brands in that vein are keeping the torch alight in motorsports and higher performance cars.
Yes.
And so it's worth mentioning that Lamborghini, Porsche, Audi, and some other brands are and like some other brands that we don't get here in the US.
Yeah.
Are several of these brands are under the Volkswagen group. Even including Bugatti.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Bugatti Volkswagen will sell you Volkswagen will sell you a sub $20,000 Jetta. And if you are in their good graces enough, and if you are one of the 40 people on the entire planet to be invited to buy the Bugatti Divo for over $8 million.
Wow.
That's all under Volkswagen.
Wow.
But anyway, as far as this keep this on EVs, I just wanted to put that out there that a lot of these brands are under the Volkswagen name. Or they're under the Volkswagen group. So with Lamborghini and Porsche, the reason I brought these up is, it might seem kind of weird to bring up Lamborghini right after Kia. And I in no way am I saying that like these companies are competing for business. They absolutely are not.
Yes.
But Lamborghini is actually showing some pretty huge innovation already, not with pure electric vehicles, but on the road to EVs.
Yes.
And Lamborghini recently announced, just like in the last few days, and again, I saw this on Car and Driver, and Road and Track magazine also had a similar story on this.
Yeah.
That Lamborghini's, even while I'm saying this, I'm going to look it up, make sure I have the number right. Lamborghini has pledged that their entire lineup will be pure electric. That will be pure electric and hybridized in some way by 2025.
Wow. And we're in 2000. That's a big and bold claim.
That's huge.
That's a huge claim.
Yeah.
Wow. From 2021 to 2025, to think about the impact of that type of vehicle, that sports vehicle, to have their entire line reach that status by 2000. You said 2025? I
think 2025.
Wow.
Yeah. Which might sound just crazy and ludicrous.
Yes.
But I'm sorry, I got my number wrong. So according to Car and Driver, the full Lamborghini road car range will be plug-in hybrids by 2024.
Wow.
And after that, an all-electric fourth model is planned to follow. So it might sound crazy, like, wow, how could you do that in only 2 years?
Yeah.
Or 2.5 to 3 years. But consider this. that might seem like a crazy thing for Mercedes-Benz, which currently Mercedes-Benz has 8 SUVs in their lineup.
Wow.
Before counting any cars.
Wow.
So yeah, making an EV range out of all that many cars, that's crazy. But you know how many models Lamborghini has? 3.
Yeah. So it's easier for them to tackle that, and get to it right away.
Right. And so they have the Huracan, which is the smaller performance car, the Aventador, which is the larger performance car, and my personal single favorite sounding car of all time, and the Lamborghini Urus, which is their SUV. So they're only tackling 3 cars here. But they recently debuted a very limited production car called the Scion, or the Scion. It's an Italian word I might be mispronouncing, but it's spelled Sian. And this is actually it's their first hybrid vehicle. They've never done a hybrid vehicle before, and this thing uses a V12 engine along with hybrid components, but it doesn't use batteries.
Wow.
So how could you do a hybrid without batteries?
Exactly.
It uses things called supercapacitors.
Okay.
Now,
so what are supercapacitors?
Well, as you can tell from the name, it comes from the word capacitor, which every electronic device we have has capacitor in some way. It's just part of the way it works. Now, supercapacitor is basically by its name just a bigger, beefier capacitor.
Okay.
Now, capacitors are little tiny things. In a phone, they could almost be even microscopic, right? In something that small. But they are meant to store energy and quickly release it.
Oh,
so they they can charge instantly and instantly release it all.
Wow.
And that of course is happening in almost immeasurably small amounts in our normal everyday devices.
Right.
But Lamborghini has in the Scion, these supercapacitors are actually almost fully charged from normal driving.
Wow.
And then when they really want a full burst of power, they can fully discharge, and they actually output like 5 or 6 times more power than a battery would be able to.
Wow.
And the Scion can pull a 0 to 60 of under 3 seconds. It makes over 700 horsepower.
Wow.
And obviously this is all just in the realm of the 0.1%. I mean, these things, I think their run was like 20 cars ever.
Yeah.
And so, but again, yes, it's unattainable for just about everyone.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, for the purpose of talking about EVs becoming mainstream.
Yes.
That's what it takes.
Exactly.
That's sometimes what it takes. It takes cars that cost couldn't be close to $10 million.
Yeah.
But you got to try the technology out somewhere.
You do.
And so that's one of the ways they're doing this. So I bring up Lamborghini just as an exotic brand.
Yeah.
Just because that's partly where that's taking place. And McLaren just debuted last month the McLaren Artura, which is their first hybrid.
EV.
Actually, no, it's not their first hybrid. The P1 was their first, but this is one of it's their first mass production hybrid.
Okay.
The McLaren P1 was a very limited car that only certain people were invited to purchase.
Wow.
And it made over 900 horsepower. So that one was there, but again, limited production that only some could buy.
Exactly.
But the Artura is a mass production car that, yes, it's a supercar that's hundreds of thousands, only not many can afford it. But again, mass production.
Yes.
So it's they're taking a step into that, becoming more mainstream with it.
That's right. And the reality is there are some people that can afford that vehicle. So they want that, just like we're saying, at every level, each person should have a chance to experience hybrid electric vehicles.
Exactly.
So
that's a great way to put it. That's an excellent way to put it. Yeah.
Yes. At every level.
Yeah. And so I don't want to stick on Lamborghini too long because I know that's out of the realm of most people, including me.
Yes.
But a name that might not be out of the realm for many people, at least not their entire lives, would be something like Porsche.
That's right.
Now Porsche is one to go a little more into because Porsche already has electrified and hybrid vehicles.
Yes, they do.
They've had a hybrid for a little bit, but now they just came out with the Porsche Taycan not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Porsche Taycan is a 4-door sedan that a lot of people called a competitor to the Model S, which for certain reasons it is not exactly, but it's an all-electric vehicle. And it's Porsche's first all-electric vehicle, actually. So, Porsche is already kind of there. And now obviously this again is not a cheap car. The Taycan is going to be an 80, 90, over $100,000 car.
Yeah.
But it's playing to that market. Now we talk about Mercedes-Benz having a luxury brand name, and they do, but that's still not a luxury name like Porsche.
Exactly.
It's all about public perception, right? What does the public think of your brand?
Yep.
And the public generally sees Porsche as a higher name than Mercedes brands,
we do.
BMW or Audi.
Absolutely.
And so now Porsche is not what I would call an exotic brand. If car enthusiasts or people who are not in cars, I don't think people would call Porsche exotic. Yes, they're expensive, and yes, they're considered one of the top, but we're not exotic.
Yeah.
Because they make cars that, while distinctively Porsche, don't look really crazy.
Yeah.
You can buy a Porsche Cayenne like every other person who lives in your wealthy neighborhood also bought a Porsche Cayenne. They're a dime a dozen. You see them all the time, and they don't stand out.
Yes. But a Lamborghini will.
Right. A Lamborghini would, obviously. But the thing is, Porsche's not an exotic brand for that reason. They make cars that are geared more towards, the masses, at least the masses who can afford those.
Yes.
And here's the thing about Porsche is that Porsche's kind of this bridge, right? It's the bridge between, the common everyday car, like the Kia bringing out the EV6,
right,
and the really exotic things like Lamborghini, McLaren, and others.
Yes.
That Porsche's kind of playing in that middle ground, and that's a very important middle ground to play in because those are the kind of people that have the money to throw around to invest in certain things like that.
That's right.
So what I like about the Porsche Taycan is, again, it's a car that'll stand out if you really know what to look for. Like, I've seen a couple on the road, and it stands out to me like crazy. It's like seeing a supercar. Like, wow, a Porsche Taycan. Just because it does look distinctive.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look out of this world.
Yeah.
And I think they took a nice approach to that. And just to touch on this, only reason I don't think it's a direct competitor to the Model S is because it's a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Depending on how you option it. And again, it goes back, even though they're both fast, they both have great technology. It's just a different place in your mind, isn't it? I don't think anyone's comparing Tesla to Porsche.
No. Well, no one's comparing Tesla to anyone right now.
Right. And so I just mean as far as like the heritage of the brand and what they do and stuff like that. But, that's to kind of touch on on super high-end luxury and exotic brands are doing.
Yeah.
That's what's being developed. And, are super capacitors ever going to be a part of our everyday life? And EVs probably not for a long time, or if ever. But it's being tried out somewhere.
Exactly. Now that, we've talked and really went over a lot of manufacturers today and how they're really tackling their electric vehicle plan. And thinking about our community, when I was thinking about this segment, I was like, what really can we say to our community from a safety standpoint when it comes to electric vehicles? And understanding what your brand is, because everybody has their own brand, right? And maybe your brand might change now. Like we said, there's brands that are kind of recreating themselves and creating brand new lines. And you might become a Mercedes-Benz customer that, maybe you weren't looking at Mercedes-Benz before. But just, like I always like to ask you once we get towards the end of talking about all of this great information, what is one piece of advice that you can give the community today when we think about electric vehicles and how all of the manufacturers are becoming or thinking about how they are going to introduce it mainstream? What should we be thinking about when it comes to mainstream and as a driver and passengers? What should be on our minds? What's one thing that you can share with the community today?
Yeah, boy, that's a tricky one. It's such a deep, right? It's such a deep rabbit hole with this kind of thing. And with so many brands tackling EVs in different ways, the easy answer would just be to say, well, be ready, because it's happening.
That's it. That's it right there. That is exactly what you should say, because that to me is what I would say. It is your awareness. It's not like this big formula that we have that is going to be able to say, you're going to be ready for electric vehicles. You're going to be, you're going to be an early adopter of these new technologies. But it's more of you being aware, listening to different podcasts like we have, going to the FeaturesFirst website, understanding the technology at work in your car. What is your favorite manufacturer doing when it comes to electric vehicles? How are they making it affordable for you as a driver? How are they making it user-friendly for you? Thinking about that now versus when you're basically hit with that responsibility of having to purchase one and not understanding. So from my standpoint as a driver, I think that's a great, a great segue into what you said, which is your level of awareness. Be ready.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I kind of jokingly said, like, well, just be ready, just because that's some big umbrella statement that covers everything. But my tip to the community would be do your research. And what I don't mean like go do your homework.
Yes.
But what I do mean is keep your ears open, keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, because researching into what car you're going to be looking for, if you're going to be in the market, not even anytime soon, but in some other time in your life ever.
Yes.
It's when I say do your research, like I said, I'm not giving you like a homework assignment, but try and like awareness, like you said, Lisa, is the best way to put it. But really, really think about and try to notice what is being done in different spaces.
Yes.
And what different brands are doing, at least brands that you would be looking forward to. You don't have to memorize the horsepower of Lamborghini's upcoming hybrids, right? But but do think about how vehicles that you've taken for granted are going to change, because the next time you're buying for a car at any point in your life, it's going to be very different than researching a car as you ever would have before. And I mean, it's to keep this episode from going on too far. I'll touch on this just now. Just now. We're recording this podcast less than 24 hours after Ford unveiled their first all-electric F-150 pickup truck.
Yes.
Called the F-150 Lightning. The F-150 has been the best-selling automobile, not truck, car, or anything else specific. It's been the best-selling automobile in the United States for over 40 years straight. And so, I mean, talk about one that's going to shake up the market. That's going to shake up a bunch of people who have been buying F1, who's, them, their dads, grandads, and great-granddaddies have all been buying the F-150, right? And Ford announced that the Ford F-150, the Lightning, the all-electric, is going to start under $40,000.
Wow.
And it's amazing. They also announced a whole new self-driving tech that's going to be rolling out.
Wow.
An all new electric transit van. Those big white Ford cargo vans?
Yes.
They debuted an electric version of that in the same presentation.
Wow.
So this is what I'm talking about. Even something as long-standing and just set in stone as the Ford F-150 or the Ford Mustang, two of the most recognizable names in not just America but the world in the world of automotive. These have now been shaken up. There's, the Mustang Mach-E is an electric crossover.
Yes.
That's actually going to be in competition with the Kia EV6.
Very true.
The F-150 is now going to be an electric vehicle. Like in so many people's lifetimes, they thought it would never happen.
Yeah.
So this is why my number one tip to the community is, do your research.
Yes.
But just be aware. Be aware and be ready for it to change, because things are going to be different than you ever would expect they would be.
Exactly. And you heard it best from our product specialist. Be ready and be prepared. Do your research. Join the community. We have our community event coming up on September 14th. And we are telling everybody in the community, come out and do your part as a driver and a passenger in this new era of automation. Empower yourself. We are bringing the thought leaders together. We're talking about cybersecurity. We're talking about how your data is going to be protected, and engineering, understanding the vision behind the tech and how it's created. And most importantly, education, deep learning. How can we implement strategies to really understand what's going on? And like Luke said, be ready. So we We are so excited that you joined us for another episode of FeaturesTalk Podcast. I had a wonderful time with you, Luke, today, talking about all of the different brands and what they're doing. And we will see you guys again for another episode of FeaturesTalk. Until next time, drive safe.
Thanks for listening. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube at FeaturesFirst Auto and online at www.featuresfirstauto.com to join the community and empower yourself to drive and ride safely and informed. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, drive safe.